That was fantastic. I've been reading Daniel Singer's Prelude to a Revolution along with Bret and a couple other people on campus here, and we're discovering a lot of parallels between what they experienced in France in May '68 and what we're living through today. And I just wanted to share a quote, since you ended with kind of talking about the adjunct faculty, that I found when I was reading that really struck me. As you know, depending on how you classify adjuncts, whether we are just part-timers or non-tenure track, we make up about 3/4 of the workforce and in higher education, in the faculty, excuse me, of higher education. So the quote says, when 2/3 of an institution's members are doomed to failure, it is a perfect hunting ground for political activists. And the university was beginning to be described as a school for misfits. So I think what we're seeing now is lots of people becoming much more in tune with the ideas that of corporatization, of neoliberalism, and how they're affecting us in the academy. And I'm going to turn it over to Bret Hamilton now. And I think the second half of our program is fixated on alternatives and how to get towards them, how to build them, how to get out of this oppressive system. Okay, so thanks everyone for tuning in and for coming tonight too. So Bret Hamilton is the editor of You Are Not Alone. He is a junior at Columbia College Chicago, majoring in cinema arts and sciences with a concentration in cinematography. Bret's objective is to make the world work for 100% of humanity in the shortest possible time through spontaneous cooperation without ecological offense or the disadvantage of anyone. Fair goal, for sure. During his time at Columbia, Bret has organized with Occupy Chicago, Occupy Columbia, and the part-time faculty union PFAC, which I am a member of. He was also an at-large senator for the Student Government Association here in 2012. Okay, so we welcome Bret. Oh, okay.
So I titled mine "Undressing the University" or "The Student Hand Job," which is the title of a small publication coming from the University of Strategic Optimism, which is a group out of I'm not really sure where they're out of actually, but there's a lot of really great stuff about organizing the university in this book that I borrowed from and took it, and so you'll see quotes on the screen in this, and that's where all these came from. So you can go to the next page. Like Bree said, I am a student here at Columbia, and in my 3 years here, I've been active in 3 different organizing campaigns that have been extremely successful overall. The first year that I was here, my freshman year, 2011, which was the year of Occupy, which is probably the highest moment of class consciousness in recent times, I think, and that reflected definitely at Columbia, where we had Occupy Columbia. Just to give a little background, during 2011, Columbia began an initiative called prioritization, in which they began to evaluate the ways that the school's majors were applying to the school's mission statement in a way, which roughly translates into which majors were making them the most money and how could they reevaluate the school and restructure it in order to make money. So obviously this was done at the disinterest to most of the students, and Occupy Columbia kind of started as a force to combat this. A small group of students organized together, and they performed a lot of actions, one of which was the mic checking of Luis Love during a protest, which there's a video of which you can play here.
Engage us in any meaningful discourse.
Or engage us in any meaningful discourse.
Regarding restructuring cuts or tuition hikes.
Regarding restructuring cuts or tuition hikes.
You leave us no other choice.
You leave us no other choice.
Than to impose our collective voice on you.
Than to impose our collective voice on you.
We're sure you'll agree.
We're sure you'll agree.
That this is more than reasonable.
That this is more than reasonable.
Many of the programs and majors.
Many of the programs and majors.
Facing cutbacks or total elimination.
Facing cutbacks or total elimination.
Define the radical and progressive nature of Columbia.
Define the radical and progressive nature of Columbia.
That you stress so much.
That you stress so much.
When promoting the college.
So in this, I think we see a lot of the things that Ben and Ashley have been talking about. We see like the neoliberalist approach of like austerity really hitting the school in a very concentrated microcosm, where we see them reevaluating and cutting the things that students need and enjoy in order to make more profit, in order to like justify these administrative positions and the buying of like giant buildings and these shiny like South Loop houses that we like are in right now. Eventually, this led to the establishment of a few public forums, which the administration showed up to a few, and then, but more often than not, just refused to show up to. One of which the president did show up, and we had a pretty meaningful discourse in that as well. But out of that, the president lost his cool at a time, and we captured a video of him telling a student to shut up, which garnered over 20,000 views on YouTube. It was featured in the Chicago Reader, the Sun-Times, the Tribune, and really directly hit the school's profit, which is the most important thing. That students who Google Columbia College during that time were immediately, the top link that they found was this video of their top administrator attacking students in a very verbal way. We could also watch this video.
Now I'm covered.
I wish.
Oh, it's an Obamacare ad.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
excellent. All right.
Well, you make 4,000 less than the United States president from what I heard, and I'm a homeless student here. There's no incentives for a homeless student, which sucks. Trust me, I should know. I live on the streets, but I come to class when I can. What are you gonna do, man? Like, what is my tuition? Answer my question. What is my tuition paying for other than like electricity? Because I still have to find money for books. I still have to find money for housing, which is extremely expensive, and it should not be, especially since I'm a homeless student. And like, but no, you answer. You should be able to answer. You're the president.
All right, I'll go ahead. So don't blame us because you are.
No, I'm just saying, you're my brother, you should love me.
No. I let you talk. All right? I respected you and you said everything you needed to say. I'm very, very sorry that you're not homeless. And we will do everything that we can to support you. I will do our dormitory, etc. We will do what we can. Our tuition has to be based upon what our expenses are. My salary has nothing to do with it. If I work for zero.
How does it have nothing to do?
Oh, shut up. If I work for zero, we will still have the same challenges that they have. My salary is less than 1% of our budget. What I say
Now, my question to you, Mr. Carter, President Carter,
this is what we'll do. This is what we'll do if we're going to be civilized.
So as you can see, students getting organized and like creating these venues for them to speak out directly to the administration was extremely productive in showing the hypocrisy of the administrative roles in general, and also like getting them to like directly address what's happening in higher education. And from this, prioritization was almost dropped completely. We saved all of the majors that were being cut, and they're still thriving today. President Carter, who at this time was scheduled to resign in 2 years, resigned a year early, which, I mean, I think it's general public opinion that he was asked to leave early because of the horrible PR that this video generated. And so I think that this just shows how the amount of power that students have at a university, and that by generating bad publicity for the school, which is unfortunately the only way that you will get the administration to listen and to like directly address your demands, we combated the neoliberalism and austerity that we had been experiencing. Of course, we didn't directly eliminate it at the school. It's still happening by and large, but we experienced quite a bit of success with the small time that we were organizing, and I think there's something to say about that. So we go to the next slide. We also, during a protest, we occupied the DePaul's president's office, which led to a weekend occupation of their student union. And the main thing that I wanted to stress with this is that it was an action through cash that was not just DePaul students. It was a solidarity. It was a movement like in direct solidarity from Columbia students, UIC students, Loyola students, in which we all gathered together and occupied DePaul's campus, knowing that each and every university justifies their tuition increases by the tuition increases that every university in the area uses. So I think that this just stresses the importance of a citywide student movement, something that we need to like reach out to other universities and realize that our struggle is everybody's struggle, and that an injury to one is an injury to all. Keep going. Last spring, about this time, the part-time faculty union at our school, which has been said comprised about 75% of the teachers, had been in negotiations for a fair contract for 3 years at that point.
3.5, yeah.
3.5 years at that point, with no sign of relief at all. And just out of interest in unionizing, and especially like faculty unionizing, I attended one of the bargaining, and I was shocked at the horrid attitude that the bargaining agents had towards the students. There's absolutely no intention of like compromising on any of their demands, and it was very shocking and very inspiring to me to be able to witness how terribly these students were being, or the teachers that were teaching me like so well and dedicating so much of their time to my education in the classroom were being treated. And then of course their pay was abhorrent, like they're living on poverty wages as professors, and all the while I'm going into horrible amounts of debt to pay for it. And so I started bringing my friends to these bargaining campaigns, and interestingly enough, the attitude of the bargaining team on Columbia's side became one of our biggest ways to bring people into the movement. I think as soon as people went there and saw how the faculty was being treated and their role in the university, they were immediately lit with this fire to support the faculty, and they realized almost immediately the correlation between our learning conditions and the faculty's working conditions. And also, seeing students get involved was a very big turning point for the teachers as well. In that it inspired them, and that they felt that they had backing by even the small number of students that they did have backing. They felt justified to be able to go to call for a one-day strike and to protest out in the streets of Columbia. And that summer, the school appointed a new bargaining team and signed the contract for the first time in 3.5 years. So again, we see how much power the students have at the school, and how just very, very basic, very small numbers of organizing was able to directly change the conversation and enact a positive change at the school. So you can keep going. This year I've organized a group of students to collaborate in creating a zine, which you can find on the chair in the back. And right now we've distributed 1,500 copies around the campus so far. And the zine, along with giving statistics and looking really neat, calls for a student union, and sets out 3 demands, which we're organizing right now to be met, which is our immediate freeze on tuition, immediate budget transparency, and also the establishment of an elected student representative to the Board of Trustees. And also in the zine, it talks about how through organizing around these individual demands, we can create an organization, a student union, that fights for more student power to be able to affect policy changes on a larger scale and on a more permanent basis. And I think that's really the direction that we need to be going when organizing around schools. It's good. These are some stickers that we also are in the process of printing to put around the school as well, to generate some dissent and to try to get more atmosphere of dissent going on. So, at Columbia, I think the biggest thing that we've been able to organize around is a basic ideology. And that ideology is that every working person, meaning a student, faculty, or just generally working class, deserves a say in the decision-making bodies that control our lives. And so that happens by unionizing and creating bodies that fight for a say in these things. And we also recognize that the model of education, meaning students as passive consumers of education and teachers as depositors of information in students, and recognizing that students have been, for 12 years, have been trained to sit quietly while they consume the information given to them, rather than being active recreators of the world and active evaluators and being able to name the problems that they are facing. And I think that by addressing this and getting students in positions of power that able them to reshape the way that the university functions, we can create a university that creates activists, that creates like people that are generally that are accustomed to demanding a say in the things around them, and I think that can play a key role in the development of the destruction of capitalism, really. And I think that higher education in general has a really large role in that. Keep going. So there's also a lot of things that are problematic about student organizing, and that students inherently are placed in positions of competition with each other. And the establishment of more and more application-only classes that are based against students against one another, and not seeing classrooms as places of collaborative learning, but rather as like individual learning conditions. And I think that it's key to keep actions in the realm of these kind of ideologies, that education should be free and should be given to everybody, regardless of anything. The only thing you should need to have access to education is a desire to learn. And I think that we can use actions that point out the absurdity of this privatization in higher ed, and how it's generally ineffective at educating students to be able to go out and enact change in the world in a positive way. And I think, as Brie was talking about, France 68 is a great example of this, where students occupied their administrative buildings, and they took control of their campuses and inspired workers, where the student uprising inspired workers to do the same in their workplaces. And by seeing students taking action and students demanding power in their workplaces, that workers also reflected that. And so a few of the actions at Columbia that we've been kind of working towards, and you are not alone, is finding PDFs and ebooks of textbooks online rather than buying them. And once you do find them, emailing them to everybody in your class. PDFs and ebooks are very small files that can be easily distributed to everybody in your class. And also, like, occupations, I think, are very ideologically centered, in that students are reclaiming positions of power, like physical positions and physical locations of power at the school, for our own benefit, in order to educate ourselves in the world of activism. There's also skill shares and teach-ins, hacking a classroom. The first week of class, you can have a week of disorientation, where you go into the class before before students would know what a teacher looks like, and for however long you're able to be in there before the teacher shows up, just like teaching your ideology, and teaching that students should deserve places of power in these schools, and that education should be free, and that we should be fighting for tuition freeze. And also it's important that organizing and being on the streets is a mode of education in itself, that we are teaching kids how to demand, how to take action and take agency in their lives, in the apparatuses of their lives. Also, public art. I think art has a role in every activist movement. The zines have been extremely effective because we're able to hand them to people, and that they see immediately that it's a really nice looking, it's a really good piece of equipment, and they can physically hold it in their hands and take home. And the idea that the zine would be sitting at a coffee table and somebody would pick it up at their place and read through it, and get these radical ideas in their heads immediately, I think it's very important. I like this. I'd also like to spend the last half of this talking about how to find information on your university. Unfortunately, for private universities, they're not legally required to disclose a lot of the information, which makes giving any kind of critiques on tuition increases extremely problematic, because they can just justify it by saying, "Oh, the expenses are going up," without giving us any proof of this. And they can, if we ask what expenses, or how, like, what exactly needs more funding, and like how can you justify this tuition increase to us? There's no answer ever. And so I think like knowledge as power in a very direct way, like knowing more about your university and about the finances and about how it's funded is very important. And a very a very important question to ask is, why do schools want tuition increases? What is appealing about tuition to schools that is not, like, what makes tuition different than endowments or donations and things like that? And the biggest difference between tuition and endowments is tuition is an unrestricted fund, meaning that they can, when the school gets an endowment, they're restricted to being able to spend it only in certain places. Like they can only spend it in faculty, or they can only spend it paying for buildings, or they can only spend it doing these certain things. Whereas tuition, on the other hand, is unrestricted, meaning they can spend it however they want, using it for advertising campaigns or to, you know, make their campus more beautiful and to like make it more appealing to future students rather than benefiting the students that are there. So for the last half, I'm going to come up to this computer and do a demonstration on how to find this information and how to find free textbooks. Finding free textbooks online is incredibly easy if you haven't already. It can be simply as easy as just looking up the name of the book with PDF next to it, and the first thing we find here is the PDF. So within 15 seconds, I've found a resource that I can easily share with everybody in my class, and that's directly putting money back into students' pockets and keeping money out of the pockets of the administrators and the awful textbook venues that are on campuses right now. There's also databases for private education that release the 990s, which is the nonprofit forms that every school has to complete. So just by searching Columbia College in Illinois, you can do this for any college, by the way. Every college has to do this, private or not, and it's all free and public. Very direct representation of how the school's finances are run. And of course it's all in horrible legal jargon, and you need an accountant to be able to go through this and fully understand it probably, but you get an idea that the school's making $215 million on tuition and fees of the 238 that they're getting out of revenue total, or $241 million revenue total. $215 million of that is coming out of tuition. So immediately you realize that Columbia is extremely reliant on tuition in dollars, and that a student strike, for example, would be horribly effective at Columbia. They would immediately bring the administrator to the knees. But yeah, just knowing this kind of information. There's also a public bond database called mooneyos.com, and so you can create a free account, and by doing this you can find bonds that the state has given schools under a lot of different things. So for example, Columbia recently bought a giant building in the South Loop, 811 South Michigan or something like that. That's been empty for 2 years. They bought it in 2011, hasn't been used at all. Meanwhile, they're claiming that the school is strapped for cash, has no money, they need more for tuition. As you can see, it's like a reflection of the neoliberalism and austerity that we're seeing everywhere, where Rahm Emanuel closes 56 schools in Chicago and then spends $300 million on a basketball stadium for DePaul. Free accounts on this, it's really easy to set up, and immediately we can find a $13 million bond that the school received in 2011 for that building. And these bond documents also give us a very interesting look into why tuition is so important at schools, because you'll find in here, if I can find it, their refunding plan directly talks about how the school is confident that they can continue to increase tuition, and that they're pledging our tuition in order to receive these bonds. And so by by fighting against this and by fighting, we see that students have an immense amount of power in the expansion of the school, and that by fighting back against tuition increases, we directly affect how the school, we can directly affect how the school is run, more so than just the publicity that we saw from the shut up business. But also that the school doesn't see dissent or the students' opinions on tuition increases as any kind of like necessary. They just don't really see it as a threat. They think that they can generally just increase tuition without any friction at all, and so you understand why they get so tense whenever they see things like this happening. Those resources can be available online. I'll post them all to the cash group tonight and to the event page as well, so you guys will all have those links. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brett.